Okay, let me play around with this a little bit. All right, this is the daily driver, recently acquired, and we have started with the valves, the ignition system, replaced the points, the condenser, the rotor wires, plugs, etc. I'm having a heating issue, or a cooling issue I should say, and it didn't have the right thermostat in it. The thermostats in the TRs, let's see, this is what was in it. This is what was in it, and I haven't put it in any water to see if it would work or not. But this isn't going to work as well as the unit that it's designed for, which is the sleeve, which is somewhere around here. But the sleeve unit opens and closes, and you can see this hole here where my finger is. Oh, I'm sorry, no, the hole would go in the top that goes on here that hold the thermostat. There's a little valve or a cutout that goes over here to the bypass. You guys better look at this. So, all right, here's where the water flow, and the thermostat, when it warms up, what it does is it shuts off this connection that goes from here to the bypass. So when it's cold, water comes up and goes to the bypass valve, right? And as the thermostat let's see, would it open up? The water will move. It'll close off this bypass slot here, and water will go into the radiator. And you don't want a continuous flow. If you get a continuous flow, your coolant will never actually take the heat out of the block. And so you want water to sit in the block, heat up, come on out, and get cool and go back in. Anyway, with the wrong thermostat, it either moves too quick, right? And so the engine runs hotter. With the wrong one, or it doesn't use the bypass valve correctly. So I took all this apart yesterday, and we'll clean that up and get that done. The other thing we're going to do today, so that's what I have to wait for the parts for. The other thing we're going to do is rebuild these carbs today, real quick. And there are some reasons for that. If you look at, so in here, this is the air valve. And we lift that up. That should come right back down and sit nicely. Okay. And you can see there's a gap there, a little bit of gap on top of the cold starting bar, which is normal, but not as much as a gap as this one. And so this car's got about 60,000 miles on it. And it just doesn't hurt to rebuild them. Rebuilding Strombergs is not that difficult, and we're gonna do that today and get that done. We're gonna take them apart and then wait for the parts to get here. But we'll clean them and replace the easy parts. The big thing is to just make sure that I don't know if you can see the needle in there. The needle is centered, right? And one adjustment basically sets these up. What you do is when you get them all back on installed, and you let this air valve all the way down to the bridge, push that down to the bridge, and then you bring in the adjustment nut all the way up to where they're touching. right? And then you take it out 2 or 3 turns. The book says 3 turns. And then you do the same thing on this side, right? Then you, with the car running, you just go in with a little lifting bar and lift this about, I think it's 0.062 inch. And if the RPMs increase, the mixture is too rich. If RPMs decrease, then it's too lean. If it stays the same, then it's right. And the idea here, a lot of people don't understand how constant depression carbs work, and we'll get into this more when we have the carb apart. But for a given throttle position, this air valve will move up and down based on suction up here with the diaphragm. Right, there's a diaphragm in here, and we'll take this apart. And so what happens is the weight of this, and if there's a spring in there, this will balance, right, so that the pressure up is equal to the pressure down, right, or the weight down, the suction up, and this will normalize. And so what happens is you have a constant depression, right? What's changing though, in terms of getting more air in, is this needle is moving up and down out of the jet, and it's allowing, the needle is shaped like a needle, right? And so it's allowing more flow of gas to come in. So that's why there's not a low speed, jet, a high speed jet, an intermediate range jet. There's just one adjustment on these carbs. And so that they're pretty easy to take care of. A lot of people don't think that they're as tunable. Well, why is there oil right up here? There's oil here, and that's because when you hit the throttle, right, it would create a huge amount of vacuum. The huge amount of vacuum would lift the air valve up, right, and then the carburetor would go lean and you would stall. And so by putting a damper between this air valve, right, and you got a damper and some oil up here, damper rod, well, that makes it more difficult to raise this, right? So what that does is actually keeps this down a little bit more, right, which increases the suction, right, which brings more gas in, right? So instead of an accelerator pump, we've got essentially what amounts to be a vacuum activated pump without the pump, if that makes sense. But we'll get into that more later. So I'll just put this video up real quick for an introduction, and more later when we get the carbs off. Thanks.